I woke up at 2 a.m., hiked 26 miles through a desert canyon, and all I got out of it was some gnarly hiker's toe. But also these D&D desert encounter ideas. Hi guys, I'm back! Last month I did a rim-to-rim backpacking trip in the Grand Canyon, and I'm a very slow hiker, but not so slow that it took me a month to do it. We also actually moved a day after we got back from the trip, and nobody mentioned to me that it's really hard to get anything done and also unpack. But anyways, while I was out there hiking, naturally I spent a bunch of my time thinking about how I could turn this into something that I can put in my D&D game, so I thought I'd share some of my encounter ideas with you guys. And the last one's my absolute favorite one, so don't skip it. One of the first things anyone thinks about when they think of desert survival is obviously trying to find water. But in D&D, this could be incredibly boring if you don't do it the right way. If you only throw out a few skill checks for your party and then they die of dehydration, it could also be incredibly frustrating. We can do better. So how do you make almost dying of dehydration fun? The important thing to remember is that searching for water shouldn't be the only thing that they're doing. This should be something that's going on concurrently with whatever their main quest is. But it should be hampering their progress and making things harder for them. It shouldn't be the main storyline. And this is because the chances of dying of dehydration should be upping the stakes for them and kind of pushing them to go faster. And one way to really get this through is to start using exhaustion levels if they can't find water in certain time frames. And you can use Blades in the Dark style clocks, or you can use even one of those little like sand hourglass timer things. But instead of just doing straight checks, you find something, check, you don't again, oh no, you're dead. This will really help up the stakes because all of a sudden their skill checks are gonna be worse. Their movement speed's gonna decrease. It's going to make it feel more realistic that they're gonna be on this decline before they're just blip dead. And if your party is having more failures than successes, this is a really great way to get to introduce a faction that maybe they would have normally not dealt with because, you know, what the faction's looking for is a higher price than they're willing to pay in terms of quests, maybe moral trade-off type dilemmas. You could also try using magic items that have serious downsides once they're equipped. But it's an easy way to make it so they're willing to accept bargains they might normally not go for. And while some people might worry about create and destroy water kind of invalidating desert type encounters like this, I actually think it's a really good way to start using up some spell slots for your clerics and druids while still letting them get the chance to feel like they can do something cool and contribute, because you know they can't just make water forever. They'll have to still find a way to contain it. I really like to see parties do creative problem solving stuff. So your party might be really creative and might invalidate it, but that's fun and that's cool and they get to be excited. So yay! Another classic desert trope that really has so many different ways to play it is using mirages. I think a mirage-based plot hook would be such a blast because you really can do so many different things. If your PCs are on a quest to find a certain magic item, imagine their faces when they see it, go running over towards it, go to grab it, and their hand goes right through it. Or they finally see the first town they've seen in days and they finally reach the signpost for it and it jumps 1,000 yards away. So for things like these, maybe they need to approach it from a certain angle, maybe they need to do a certain action before picking up the sword. There's tons of different ways you can do this, and as a DM, this is one of those ways where I'll come up with an idea for what might make this mirage materialize, but I'm really just looking for interesting solutions from the players. I'm looking to just see them kind of try to solve the problem. So it's one of those puzzle type things where you don't really want to be too strict. But items and locations aren't the only things that can be mirages. If you want to spice up combat, I think a really cool spell to give a desert monster would be Major Image. I feel like I use anglerfish as inspiration a lot, but I'd really love to see a desert monster trap a party by using Major Image to create the image of someone the party knows, or maybe a creature that's in distress, so that your party goes to try and help them, only to find out that they are now in a very intense and scary combat scenario. So I'm sure we're all very familiar with the sandworms from the Dune series, but some of us might be forgetting about another popular type of sandworm. Whichever variety you prefer, your players are bound to have a blast with them either way. If you prefer your sandworms to be a form of desert transport, this is a great time to introduce factions who really know their way around the desert, or maybe to let one of your PCs that has talk with animals really shine. And if your game has an undead slant, maybe even consider using the sandworms from Beetlejuice. But if you prefer your sandworms to be more beaky and bitey, I think a Tremors-inspired encounter would be a great way to shake things up for your PCs. And if you're unfamiliar with the creature feature Tremors, the sandworms called graboids stalk their prey from underground using their vibrations. So this is obviously a great time to play the floor as lava. The way I'd run this is through a combination of combat and skill checks. So the PCs either need to kill the sandworms or get so many successes versus failures before they can reach floor that is made of solid rock where the sandworms can't get them. Maybe you've already used sandworms or some other sort of giant desert monster in your game. This idea flips the script on how these encounters usually go. And so again, you'll be presenting your PCs with some sort of giant monster. Personally, I think the scene of a giant spider or scorpion cresting a desert mountain and rushing towards your PCs would be very terrifying. But right before combat can really kick off, a towering firbolg comes sprinting towards the party, waving his hands trying to get them to stop from attacking this precious, precious baby. And I like to think of this NPC as very Hagrid-esque in personality. But if your party listens, they'll start to learn about how this NPC is training these giant monstrosities to help the town. Because they're isolated from so many other areas, they help haul giant masses of supplies that the town wouldn't have access to. And so they can go back to the ranch and see how well this endeavor is going. And you can really just turn this into a very fun, nice social encounter. Maybe there's a whole town, maybe he's the mayor of it or something. But it's just a really fun way to hook them into that area of the desert. Look at this! Look at it! This is a real sign that is in the Grand Canyon. Is this not insane? Is this not the best sign in the world? And before I tell you what I came up with for this encounter, I want you to pause the video and let me know in the comments below what you would have came up with using this as inspiration. I think it's a really fun little encounter prompt, so I'd love to hear what you'd come up with. But what I would do is have your players stumble across this squirrel that doesn't really look like the other squirrels around it. And I think this is great because for at least one of your players, there's a really high chance that it's bound to have the mimic you effect. That's where they're gonna feel bad for it, and its creepiness is gonna register as cute. So if any of your PCs get a certain distance to it, and definitely if they touch it, there's a really good chance that they're gonna notice that this thing is crawling with fleas. Fun fact, these aren't normal fleas. They're cursed! And you can play with different ideas for curses. One of the ones I've really liked in the past is anytime combat starts, a player will have to roll a d4 every round to find out if they're staying on this plane or if kind of like they're blinking in and out of different planes if they're trying to cast magic. So that's a fun one that I've tinkered with before. But there's tons of ideas out there. You can kind of find one that fits what your party would think is a good mix of fun and really, really annoying so that they want to stop it. Because what we're gonna do is use this to kind of create a game of find the druid or desert hag. They're the reason this squirrel exists, and they're the only ones that can break this curse. And I'd love it if the townspeople in the area know about this and kind of think your party's dumb. It feels very much like people who go to national parks and feed the animals even though there's signs everywhere telling you not to do this. If you do this, please stop. I'm not Snow White, neither are you, and neither is your party. But because these townspeople will know all about this issue, I think they'll be very helpful in getting your players to find them. So it's a really fun mix of social encounter. You can turn it into a combat encounter once they meet the druid or desert hag if you feel like it. But this is a really great way to lead them to the desert and kind of kick things off. And you can go play with the other desert encounter ideas from there. If you have desert encounter ideas that have been a hit with your party, comment below, let me know what they are. Hopefully by next week I will have more things unpacked and I will be better at putting out videos. But if you can't wait for more, go ahead and check out these ones.